Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for joining our diagnostic training session today. If you have any questions throughout the session, if you're joining us on Zoom, just look in the top of the bottom of your screen. Wherever your Zoom controls are, you should see a little button that says Q&A. Click that little button. It's going to open up a new box. You can type in, hit submit, and I'll get to those questions at the end of the session. If you're watching along on YouTube, just use the live chat function wherever it is on whatever device you're using. It could be off to the side, could be on the top. I'm not really sure. But make sure you use that, and I'll get to those questions and comments at the end as well. So my name is Jason Gabrinas. I'm one of Snap-on's National Diagnostic Technical Trainers. I'm starting my 10th year in the training department, and I've been traveling around North America helping techs and shop owners get the most out of their diagnostic equipment. Before I did that, it was a couple years as a diagnostic sales rep at Snap-on, so I had about 30 different Snap-on franchisees that I worked with, as well as the shops that they serviced in order to help everyone get the most out of their diagnostic needs. Then before that, it was 8 years at Subaru. So worked at a Subaru dealership. And over time, I guess, just became the default diag guy in the shop. So I always ended up with the drivability problems, the intermittent problems, the weird wiring problems that would show up on those cars. And that's really where I cut my diagnostic teeth, was trying to figure out all those weird head scratcher type problems that would come into my bay. And before that, a bunch of other miscellaneous wrenching jobs. Been a little over 25 years under hood experience for me. So our topic today is, it's actually a pretty important topic, especially nowadays with modern vehicles, and it's navigating information systems. Now, why do I say this is definitely important nowadays? You may already know, but I always like to say wrenches don't fix cars. Information fixes cars nowadays, especially. I need to look up information on pretty much any repair I do on a vehicle, especially diagnostics. There's a few key critical points where we're going to have to use that information. But even down to, if I want to do a head gasket on a Subaru, which is, pretty common, I need to know the torque specs. Right? I need to know the torque specs of a valve cover gasket, wheel torque specs, wheel inflation specs, all of these different things. Anything you need to do on a vehicle. How much oil does it take for an oil change? Anything you do on a vehicle, you need to have information in order to fix that vehicle properly. And when asked, fairly commonly, many techs will agree that most of their diagnostic time, when we're talking about diagnostics, most of their diagnostic time is spent looking up information. So I spend 20 minutes, 30 minutes of my hour diag time just looking stuff up. Right. So that's obviously decreases your efficiency when you're trying to beat that hour time. And you want to be able to speed up that information. So we need to access the information easier. Now, there's many different ways we can go about that, many different ways that Snap-on provides that you can do that as well. But this is trying to be maybe a generalized, here's how I can navigate through information. Here's the information that I might need. And then, of course, we'll show you some examples a little bit later on the tool. So it's always important, though, before I go into anything fixing a car, I want to have a good workflow. Now, when it comes to a diagnostics workflow, I would definitely recommend doing a pre-scan on every vehicle just to see, are there these errant codes in here that don't have lights associated with them? And make sure you scan it, check it, communicate with the customer. Then we get to diagnosis, and that's probably where the bulk of my information retrieval will be. Because I may need to go through a manufacturer's flow chart. I may need to look up wiring diagrams. I probably want to look up TSBs before I go too far. Things of that nature. Then we get into repair. Fixing the problem. What do I need? How do I repair it? How do I need to go about disassembling and reassembling things? What are the torque specs? What are the resistance specs that I need? And then we get to recalibrate or reset. There is a lot of things that need to be reset, relearned on a vehicle nowadays. Oxygen sensors, for example, you got to reset the heater circuit on there. But that is another information grab. You need to get that information and be aware that that's even a thing that you need to do. And then, of course, at the end, we want a post scan to verify operation. Also in my workflow, some more information that I need. It may not be from the manufacturer I need information. I also need information from the customer in order to diagnose a vehicle properly. So we want to make sure we're getting good at capturing that customer complaint. It makes a whoop, whoop, whoop noise when I do, turn left. Maybe we can get a bit of better explanation from that. Maybe we can't. But Always good to get that information from the customer. Is it hot? Is it cold? When does it do this thing? Does it do it all the time? Does it do it every third Thursday? You got to figure that out. And then, of course, we need to road test to verify, and then we want to inspect the vehicle before we even get to that pre-scan phase, right? So talking about getting that information from the customer, we want to determine their complaint. What kind of problem is my engine light on? Is that the complaint? Is it a drivability problem? Does it run like garbage? Is it a no start? Is it a noise? Is it something in the drivetrain? Is it an electrical problem? Use a customer vehicle interview worksheet would be a good use of information there. So we can actually go through. This is one that we can get out of ShopKey. And it's just a checklist. What's going on with your vehicle? Either the service writer could walk through it with them, or you hand it to them on a clipboard and say, all right, go through these and check off the little things that where's your problem? Is it will not crank? Is it crank but won't start? Is it starts but takes a long time? Is it an engine quits? Is it a poor idling condition, et cetera, et cetera? So I can just go through there, check it off. Now I have at least a little more information before I even get the car, before really the clock starts on my hour diag time too. Then, of course, if maybe it's a drivability problem or noise or drivetrain problem or really anything, you want to be able to perform that road test and see if you can duplicate the customer's problem. And then once again, we'll do that pre-scan as well to see if that gives us any more information as to what's going on. I'm using that word information a lot, but I think you understand that we need a lot of information nowadays, and we'll get to the other things too. Your diagnostic strategy then, after you've done all this prep work, is going to depend on what the problem is. If it's a drivability problem and you don't have codes, you're going to want to check TSBs. That'd be one of the first things, because manufacturers put out TSBs for things that have proven to fix a decent number of vehicles. Every manufacturer, I'm sure it's a little bit different, but it's proven to fix X number of vehicles from this manufacturer, and they'll put out a technical service bulletin on that. So you should always check them first. I can check SureTrack or experience-based information if you want to label it that way. What have other techs done in this situation on this year, make, model of vehicle? And you can break it down that way. If you do have a code, there's a whole other different diagnostic strategy that you'd use. And you need to gather even more information in that way. Also, remember the basics. Never forget the basics. So we need to have fuel. When it's a drivability problem anyways, we need to have fuel, air, spark, and compression. If we're missing one of those or one of those is off, we will have a drivability problem. So always remember that. Fuel trims, fuel pump, ignition, mechanical, all of these things I need to, what is the fuel trim supposed to be? That's kind of a generalized thing, but how about fuel pump injectors? Where are they located? What kind of fuel system do I have? Do I have a brushless fuel pump? Do I have a brushed fuel pump? What kind of injectors do I have? Are they top feed? Are they side feed? Are they direct injected? What what am I dealing with here? What kind of ignition system is it? The waste spark system? Is it, does it have the coil? Is it built in to the igniter? All of these things, mechanical. What's my compression spec? I have to look all that up. This is all information access, and that's why it takes a long time to look up information nowadays, because I just need to gather it from all these different sources. So first and foremost, I want to talk about TSBs. So TSBs are vital to any sort of problem with a car in order to fix it. It's not just for diagnostics. Of course, we'll focus on that, but it's not just for diagnosing a vehicle. It's for, my window doesn't go up and down correctly. My sunroof doesn't work right. My headlights don't work right. There could be bulletins for anything on a vehicle. And I think if you look through a list of vehicles, you would agree that there's a lot of different things in there that could be information that we need. So TSBs. Here's an example on a 2012 BMW 328i with a 3-liter. And we are on our homepage for ShopKey. So ShopKey and Mitchell Pro Demand are the same thing, basically. It's just they'll have a different logo up on the top. Snap-on dealers sell ShopKey, and then Mitchell reps sell Mitchell. So it's going to work both ways. There are other information systems out there, as I am well aware. They all will have some variance of information in there. You will have your OEM repair procedures. You will have your TSBs. You will have your specifications. You will have your flow charts, all that information. But the point that we try to make at Snap-on, and I always run the borderline of being salesy, and I try not to because I'm trying to support everybody I can. But with that, we try to make it so you can get to the information you need in way less clicks. Way less clicks. I want to get to that information as quickly as possible because I want to save that time. If I have to walk across the shop to get to a computer to get information, that's going to take time as well. They call that the walk of death, walking across, right? So having access to that information. So in this case, we are going to go with a symptom in here. So we're going to do a search. We're going to look up symptoms, and let's say the car's running. So running rough, and then it's going to bring in some information here. So I'll go into running rough. So let's see, engine runs rough. I plugged into the search box. It says running rough there. And then it's going to come into what we call our category card. So the way that Shopkey and Mitchell work is that it's going to take that information we have on the vehicle and filter it down based on different categories of information. And you may or may not be aware of this, but the way we categorize the information also goes in a workflow. The very first thing, if there are TSBs on this problem, the very first card that's going to show up is always going to be TSBs, because that's the first place you need to look. So we're going to go into TSBs, and you see there's a bunch of different categories. Some of them duplicate TSBs across categories, but in this case, we'll go to engine control systems. There's 2. And then we have an engine misfire due to failed ignition coil. Now, this is before I've even scanned it or done anything. I just know this vehicle is not running. I check the TSB and I see I have one here, misfire due to failed ignition coil. So I'll go in there and it says the current ISTA misfire test plan, so that'd be their factory tool, for these engines can be lengthy to complete and does not provide an effective method to diagnose a faulty secondary ignition component. So at least they're admitting they screwed up, right? So it's not a good plan, and we need to come up with a different plan. So here's a bulletin that'll tell you about it. If basic diagnosis determines the cause to be a faulty coil, follow the inspection and replacement procedures listed below. Make certain to test drive the vehicle. Talked about that earlier. After the repair is completed, to verify the effectiveness of the repair. Only if misfire faults or rough running are still present, continue with further diagnosis as recommended in the misfire test plan. So vehicles with an N52, which is this vehicle, which have been in service over 24 months or 10,000 miles. During the first service visit due to ignition coil failure, replace all Bosch ignition coils with Delphi coils. That's it. That solves that solves your problem. If any ignition coils were replaced previously with a Delphi part, it doesn't need to be replaced. So what happened was the Bosch coils that they put in these cars from the factory had a huge failure rate and they're coming up faulty. So their solution was, well, let's just change it out for Delphi coils. And then that solves the majority of the problems on that rough running 2012 BMW. Had I not known that, had I not looked into this and read that TSB, may it have taken me a lot longer to figure this out. I would propose that it would take a lot longer to figure this out if I hadn't looked at that TSB, because I wouldn't know. I test the coil and look at the coil, and maybe the coil tests bad, maybe it doesn't. But all I have to do is take it out and do a visual. If it's a Bosch coil, swap it. That's what they're telling you to do. Swap out the Bosch coils for Delphi coils, and that should solve the majority of the problems. If there is still a misfire, you got to go through that. But having this here, checking those TSBs first. I mean, I can give you 100 examples of why you would want to check TSBs first, because you might not be aware of a problem on a particular vehicle. If you work on the same vehicle all day, every day, I can understand, maybe some of those common problems are going to come up and you're going to just know off the top of your head. Like, for example, working at Subaru, if I had a car come in with a knock sensor code in 2000 to 2010 or so, that any of those year model ranges, if it came with a knock sensor code, just gets a knock sensor, because they had a ton of bad knock sensors on those things. So it's just automatic, gets a knock sensor, and it never comes back with a problem again. So there's some of the things you're going to know, but a lot of you work on anything that comes in the door. In that case, I need to have that information at my fingertips. Now, another thing I will tell you about TSBs and the way that we do it anyway, is that we will receive the TSBs from the manufacturer digitally. We receive it as soon as the manufacturer puts it out. So we get it at the same time as the dealership. goes through a process of tagging it and making it compatible with our website and all that good stuff, you will have access to that same TSB within 2 to 8 weeks of it appearing. Just depends on where we are in the update cycle. So that is considerably faster than anyone else on the market. I will tell you that. We do studies on other information systems, and anywhere from 3 to 6 months behind on their TSB, just so you're aware. So if you get it through Intelligent Diagnostics, you get it on a Veris on the tool, or you get it through Shopkeeper Mitchell, you're going to get them way faster than you would get it using something. Next thing you should look at is experience-based information. So we already talked about TSBs. That's the first and foremost. Always check your TSBs. Then we want to check experience-based information. Plenty of different ways to get that out there as well. What we call it is SureTrack, and how we have it is it's based on over 2.25 billion real-world repairs that are checked for, what are the most common fixes for that vehicle. So we have that in a couple of different areas. First one on the screen here is going to be real fixes. So these are going to be complaint cause correction. And then you'll also notice on the right-hand side, it's going to be number of verified fixes for this problem. You'll also notice that the number one fix for this, engine runs rough, replace ignition coil, there's a TSB on that, right? So that would make sense that is one of the number one things in there. And then you can see how they rank down after that. So ignition boots, ignition coil with a code, sometimes a code combination with a symptom. All of those are in there, and it gives you that information. Next one's going to be top repairs. You may have seen this on the scan tool before, but the information is also available in here. So what is the top things that were repaired? What are the most common repairs over mileage based on incidences? So over 12,000 times it was replaced ignition coil. Makes sense to me. All right, next one's going to be causes and fixes. That'll take that same information and it'll allow you to make different connections depending on what it is. Does it run rough? Does it idle rough? Does it run rough while accelerating? So we're drilling down in this case, going through this information and able to drill down as to see, what were the most common things. If I were to click on something else, like runs rough while accelerating, then it's going to narrow it down even more. So that's all our experience-based information that we focus on. And then another one that is very near and dear to my heart, because I spent a ton of time in wiring diagrams at Subaru. Tons of wiring problems I don't know why, but lots of wiring problems. So you want to go into wiring diagram. Now, I know on the market nowadays, many of the aftermarket information systems have these color wiring diagrams. They used to be exclusive to Snap-on, and now they're not. But there are some functions within our wiring diagrams that are a little bit different than other folks' wiring diagrams. And we'll get more into that in detail when I go live on the tool. But things like dropping you off on the right page, pre-highlighting the wires that are attached to the component you're looking for, showing the wire going through different pages. And I'm actually going to talk about what a lot of these squiggly lines and things mean, because there's a legend for that. Because this class was precipitated by someone said they wanted to learn more about how to read wiring diagrams. So we're going to spend the bulk of our time on wiring diagrams. We got to get there first. So here's another thing where it highlights through different pages. Call that lenticular highlighting. You can also search from there. So let's say I wanted to figure out where this relay was. I can go in here and I can get more information on that without ever leaving the wiring diagram from there, right? So there's my master relay connector. I can get to that. And then I can also go back and look at a different connector. Say I wanted to see what one of these connectors were, what it looked like. All right, so I could do that, and I can go in and there's that connector that I clicked on. So a lot of different ways to get to your information that you need even faster. So let's go live on the tool and see what we can see. So in this case, got my tried and true Chevy Tahoe over here. And I want to do a code scan on this. I want to see what we got for codes. So I'll do a diagnostic health scan here. Okay. So you see I got my two codes. I got my P0300 misfire and I got a P0446 vet problem. So I'll go into diagnose. Now this is one way I can speed up my access to information. If I have a Snap-on tool with Fast Track Intelligent Diagnostics, it will bring the information to me, filtered out by the code, by the vehicle, year, make, model. You'll notice I do have 12 TSBs up here. So I can go through and there's a wealth of TSBs that we could look through. I'm going to check those in a little bit because we're talking about information systems here. You see I have my real world information. You see I have my data stream from the scan tool, which is another bit of information that we may need. Functional tests, guided component testing. Here's that SureTrack experience-based information all on one screen. I never had to leave the tool. There's the real fixes. And then we also, if you're using this on a Zeus or a Zeus Plus and you have Shop Here, Mitchell, you can actually link it directly to it by clicking, and then it's going to load. It's going to log me into the website. It's going to log the vehicle in, and it's going to do a search for the code. So here we go, P0300. And let's say I suspect it is an ignition coil. So I'm going to go in here under ignition coil. It's going to give you your top ranked fixes. But let's say it's an ignition coil. Maybe it is. We think it might. We can go into TSBs, and it's going to give us the same TSBs here. So we go in and let's see. How about a misfire or tick noise? That's possible too. So we go in here and we find out this is something to do with the lifters, right? On variable valve, variable cylinders. Turn the cylinders on and off the valve lifter, and they get stuck. So they say use some vice grips and pry on it and pop it out, right? So it's not exactly the most elegant solution, but that's how they tell you to do it. Right? Different things like that. TSBs. There's my real fixes. There's my top repairs. There's my causes and fixes. Then I have my specifications at my fingertips. What are the torque specs? OEM testing procedures, guided component testing procedures, component connectors, component locators, component operation, any tips from the field, wiring diagrams. That's where we're going to go next. So if I go into wiring diagrams, as I mentioned before, if I pop in on our specific wiring diagram, it drops me off on panel 4 of 8. Now, why did it drop me off on panel 4 of 8? So I don't have to hunt through this wiring diagram to get to the information I need because it's right there. I click on it, it opens up, and now you see that the wires are highlighted already. So this is for my coils. So if I dim the rest of the wires, I can go in and I can see these coils right here. Ignition coil 1, 7, 3, and 5, right? So I have my odd numbered coils. Now, if I go over here, you'll see it goes off the screen. So if I go to the next page, it's going to come across, and that was number 3, and that leads to my odd side fuse. So we have an A odd side fuse and a B even side fuse. So that's looks like it powers the injectors and oops, I clicked on that. So it powers both the injectors and the coils in that case. We got a relay up here. So if I wanted more information on that, I could do that. If I come over here, how about the ground location? This is a pesky little ground on the back of the engine. It says rear left of cylinder head. Well, where is that? Well, I want to save some time instead of having to look somewhere else. Try and find that. I can go in and I can find my component locator right there. And there's my component over here on the left. That is G130 right there. That is on the back of the cylinder head, and that can cause a lot of problems if that's loose and if there's problems there. Good stuff. Good to know. Going to save me some time there. And I never had to leave the wiring diagram. The wiring diagram's still here. I could print this out and do whatever I needed to do. Now, like I said, what precipitated a lot of this was how do I read a wiring diagram? What is this? Right, so we got some diodes in here. We got a coil there. How do I understand what some of these symbols mean? And a lot of manufacturers will use very similar symbols, which is helpful. But in this case anyway, if I want to go back to my main screen and I want to pull up just the wiring diagrams in general on this truck, you also notice we got a full list of TSBs, common specs, ADAS situation. ADAS is critical as well, by the way. Need that information in order to properly relearn a vehicle. I heard a story the other day that somebody was using our tool, our scan tool, and our rig for the targets and everything, but they weren't using our information system. So they got their information from somewhere else, and it took that they could never get the vehicle to recalibrate. So one of our reps was in there and say, hey, what's up with this? I thought your tool could do this. And then sure enough, they looked up the information in our information, and it was totally different because it was a split model year. So the other information system had the older than the split model year, and this car happened to be newer than the split model year. So it was a different procedure, but they didn't have both. So we strive to make sure that you get the most accurate information as quickly as possible in there. But anyways, going back to the wiring diagram. In this case, we have using Mitchell 1's system wiring diagrams. Now we do also have, in this case, on this vehicle, we have, the factory wiring diagram. So if I wanted to go in here and look at the factory connectors and different things, this is mostly connectors right here, but there are factory wiring diagrams in there as well if you prefer factory wiring diagrams. But we do have a legend in here. So if we go down to wiring, colors is good too. So we got color abbreviations. So black is BLK or BK or B. Blue is BLU or BU or U, et cetera, et cetera. So it's got a little color chart there. There's also wiring diagram symbols. So the symbols are going to be things like this. So we have the battery, right? So we got our plates inside the battery. We got a positive and a negative. That means battery. Circuit breaker. Clock spring, because we got our rotation in there on the steering wheel, right? Single connector, double connector. Diode. That's pretty much universally for diode. Fuse looks like that. Fusible link or fusible element looks like that. Fusible link looks like that. Heating element, defogger grid, horn, knock sensor. LED is going to have the circle around the diode and it's going to show it emitting light. Dual pole switch, single pole switch. Solenoid with a diode and resistor inside, because you see we have the resistor there. All right, so we got a resistor on that side, and then this is our coil. Solenoid there with a diode, regular solenoid, a sensor, in this case is a thermistor because it has a variable up and down. Resistor could be that, resistor could be that. A motor is going to look like this. Right, so by and large, most manufacturers are going to use very similar emblems, similar iconography across the board with their wiring diagrams. So where possible or where we have it's things are going to be labeled. It was like we looked in the wiring diagram before and everything was labeled, right? So if I wanted to pull that, so we just go this way, PL300. Look it up this way. You can see that where possible, we do have things labeled right there. So in this case, what does that wire do? Network bus is this wire, serial data is this wire, battery positive voltage is this wire, right? So we label it. There's an LED, there's an LED, there's an LED. So we have, there's the coil in there, there's some diodes in there, all sorts of different things that we have in there, and it translates across. If I were to go into the OEM diagrams here, those are up here. Let's see. Those are connectors. So bank one. All right. So here's the OEM wiring diagram. Now there's a relay. There's some connectors there. There's my coils. Right. So I got they use a slightly different thing with the coils, but they have the diodes in there. Being able to interpret and understand the wiring diagram, and then there's ground right there. Right. So being able to interpret and read a wiring diagram is going to be very helpful, especially when you trying to chase one of those electrical gremlins inside a wiring harness or something like that. Also, TSBs are critical to anything that you want to be able to figure out, because the manufacturer may have figured it out first before you did. Also, having experience-based information, what have other technicians done in this situation, is also key. And then, of course, having access to all that information easily without having to look in multiple different locations will save you a ton of time as well. So hopefully we got some new knowledge on looking through wiring diagrams and other things that we may not have been aware of when looking for information on vehicles. So with that, that is my time for this week. Let's talk about next week. Another all new class. So we've these, as I said, these first 5 classes of the year. These are all based on viewer content. So I did a survey at the end of last year and said, hey, what do you want to learn about? So this topic tonight was, I want to learn about how to better go through information and learn how to read wiring diagrams better. So that's what we did. Next week's going to be on immobilizer systems. Now it's going to be A lot on the system design and operation and kind of how it works. Not really a lot on key programming. We're going to touch on it though, because there are some intricacies with it, with the law, NASTF, if you ever heard of them, Secure Digital Rights Model, things of that nature. So we'll touch on all of that as well. So just be, so that's what we're going to talk about next week. How does it work? How do I keep my car from starting when a thief steals it? Same time, same place, 6 and 9 Eastern. If you want to go join on Zoom, go to snapon.com/OT. Otherwise, if you want to watch the 6 p.m. Eastern, I also simulcast on YouTube. So go to youtube.com/Snap-on Diagnostics. If you are watching on YouTube, please make sure you subscribe, give a thumbs up, ring the bell, all the stuff that the YouTubers tell you to do, because it really does help us with algorithm stuff. So the more people that subscribe, the better. And then you'll just know every time we go live or add more videos, more content to the channel. And there is way more coming. There is way more coming this year. We're in some planning stages on some things. So got a lot more stuff coming. If you want to see any of our prior topics in this series, things like ADAS, data bus testing. We did a whole component testing series a couple summers ago, EVT, hybrid, electric vehicles. We have classes on all of that stuff. So this is actually class number 55. It's going up to YouTube right now, and it'll be available tomorrow. So if you want to see any of those, once again, youtube.com/Snap-on Diagnostics to go access that stuff. So now let's get to questions. If you did join late on Zoom and you do have a question, just find that Q&A box, type it in there. I'll get to that. Looks like we got some chats going through on YouTube as well. I'll get to those in a second. But before I do, I want to make sure I mention my buddy Al. Al also does free diagnostic training 3 nights a week. So Monday it's on Apollo, Wednesday is on Zeus, and Thursday is on Triton. This is things like, let's make sure your Wi-Fi is set up. Make sure your Wi-Fi is working, because that is critical on many functions on vehicles nowadays. Let's make sure that you are aware of Security Link and what's involved with that. Let's make sure we set up your free Snap-on Cloud account so you can share files with your customers, things of that nature. Then he walks through code to completion, a real-world scenario on fast-track intelligent diagnostics on the corresponding tool. That's the first hour. On Wednesday and Thursday, he takes about a 5-minute break after that, and then he goes through another hour on scope and meter and guided component tests, because those tools have scope and meter functions in there. So very, very thorough. Al's been with us a very long time. He is a wealth of Snap-on tool knowledge. If you go to snapon.com/OT, you can register. That is Zoom only, but you can attend on Zoom and go through, learn how to use your tool a little bit better. All right, with that, looks like we are clear on Zoom. No questions. That's all right. Let's go to YouTube. Looks like mainly comments anyways. So Quinn, welcome. Thanks for joining us as always. Nick from the UK, I know it's late over there, but you always join me religiously, so I definitely appreciate that. Hello, the Winton 29. Mike's Automotive Diagnostics is talking about how Nick's blowing up the chat. Yeah, Nick always likes to post it. That's okay. I definitely appreciate that. Anthony Nofi says a lot of good stuff there. So Nick loves his Zeus as always. So always going to be a good time. Always appreciate you all joining me here and hopefully increasing our diagnostics and automotive knowledge as we go. So I'd like to thank you very much. Taking a little bit of time out of your busy day to spend a little bit of time with me. Enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy your weekend. Hello, Abel. I saw you pop up there on YouTube there. So enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy your weekend. Hopefully we'll join you next week for a mobilizer systems operation and overview. And enjoy the rest of your week. Take care.